Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Engineer Hussein Mosapi. In this video, we'll be looking at compound interest, which is denoted as CI. Alright, so before we begin, do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Alright, let's begin. Firstly, we need to understand what compound interest really is. So what is this so-called compound interest? So this is just the interest calculated on the principal amount and the interest accumulated over the previous period. This implies that its accrued amount will be equivalent to the principal times 1 plus the rate raised to n, where n represents the number of times the interest is credited on an annual basis. So this is how it's given as. Be mindful that where P is basically the principal amount, the amount you invest to save. R is just the annual interest rate, or basically just the rate. And N is the number of times the interest is credited on an annual basis. Alright, with this in mind, we need to understand that the interest we earn under compound is added back to the previous amount accrued. This implies that the compound interest which we'll calculate will just be as a result of us having a following equation. The compound interest that we're going to get will basically be calculated by multiplying the initial principal amount by 1 plus the annual rate of interest, which is R, and this is going to be raised to the number of compounding periods, which is n, then basically minus 1. This here gives us the compound interest. If at all we are asked to find the compound interest, we use basically this given equation to calculate accrued amount, or the total amount over n period, or over n number of times the interest is credited on an annual basis. We basically use this one. Now, with what has been said, we need to work out the interest for the first period, then add it to the total, and then calculate the interest for the next period, and just on and on and on. Now, with this in mind, we need to understand something. There is what is known as compounding period. Now, a compounding period is basically the period at which the interest is compounded in a year. Now, when we talk about compounding may be in a year, could be in 6 months, it could be quarterly, which is basically like 4. It could be like monthly, it could be a fortnightly, which is like 14, could be weekly or daily. Therefore, the accrued amount can be calculated by saying accrued amount is equal to the principal amount, then 1 plus the annual interest rate divided by the interest for the next period, n, raised to the interest to the next period times the period of time. Now be mindful that we know that in the equation we have P to be the principal amount. Principal amount. We have R to be the annual interest rate. we have n to be the number of times interest, write this cleanly, interest is credited on annual basis. Now, when we talk about n, if n is yearly, then it's going to be equal to 1. If n is quarterly, then it's going to be equal to 4. If n is compounded weekly, we have to expect about 52, because that will be like basically in a year. Then be mindful of other terms that you would come across, like biannual, which means that you are looking at it under 2 years. Now, with this in mind, we can look at the last term that you might come across, and this is called the annual percentage rate, or basically the APR. Now, this is sometimes called the effective rate, just the effective rate. Some other books can call it the actual annual rate of interest. And the APR, which is the annual percentage rate, is equal to 1 plus the annual interest rate over n, which is the number of times it's credited, to the power n minus 1. This is how you solve the annual percentage rate. And be mindful that your answer should always be a percentage. So whatever you get, just multiply by 100%, and you'll get your annual percentage rate. Now, to basically understand this, we'll look at examples. Alright, so in the first question, it says Sylvia lent 2,000 kwacha to John at 12% per annum, compounded yearly. Find the total amount John will pay after 2 years. So to find the total amount John will pay after 2 years, all we have to do is to understand one thing. We need to understand first the data that is present within the question. So if at all we have to collect data, we would know that the principal amount is basically the 2,000 kwacha. The annual interest rate is 12%, and if we say 12 divided by 100%, we basically get 0.12 as a decimal. And then this is per annum, so this implies that n is equivalent to 1 year. Because from the formula for the accrued amount, which is a sub n, p, parenthesis 1 plus r over n to the power nt. So our time, or the period, is basically 2 years, as it has been said. So we just have to plug and chug. So the total amount, which is a sub 1, is equal to the principal, 2,000, times 1 plus the rate, which is 0.12 over 1 to the power 1 times 2. And the accrued amount, which is the total amount, basically be about 2,508.8 kwacha. And this is the total amount. But if at all we wanted to determine the interest that this person got over 2 years, we need to understand that the interest, or let's just say the total amount will always be the interest plus the principal amount. And if I make the interest the subject of the formula, then I have the interest being equal to the total amount minus the principal amount, which means that if I need to determine the interest, then I'll say 2,508.8 kwacha minus the principal amount, which was just basically 2,000 kwacha, and I have the interest to be 508.8 kwacha. So in a period of 2 years, rather, this person made an interest of 508.8 kwacha. And that's how you go about solving this question. Let's look at another question. How much interest did Mwangala get if she invested 200 for 4 years at 5% compounded by annually? So we know that the total interest is equal to, total amount rather, is equal to principal times 1 plus r over n to the power rt. nt, sorry, not rt, nt. So we can collect data. So what is the principal amount here? The principal amount here is 200 kwacha. So what is the value of r? The annual interest rate is 5%, and we can say 5% divided by 100%, and this gives us 0.05 as a decimal. And then we need to understand the value of n, which is the number of times the money is compounded. Since it's by annually, it means that's 2 years. So we have 2 years. By means 2. And the time period is 4 years. So you can just plug and chug. So you can say S sub 2 is equal to the principal, which is 200, times 1 plus the rate, which is 0.05, over n, which is 2 to the power. So it would be 2 times 4. If we compute this, we'll get a value of about 243.6805795 kwacha. So we can round this off to say that the accrued amount to be 243.68 kwacha. But now be mindful that they're asking for the interest and not the total amount. So how much interest did this person make? Remember, interest would be equivalent to the accrued minus the principal amount. So the interest would be the accrued, which is 243.68 kwacha, minus the principal amount, which is 200 kwacha. So the interest will basically be about 43.68 kwacha. And this is the amount of interest that this person made. Let's look at the next question. It says, a loan company advertises money at 8%, which is a nominal compounded quarterly. Now been asked to calculate the APR. The APR, which is just the effective rate or the annual percentage rate. Now be mindful that you can always pause this video and attempt to do these questions on your own. Alright, let's move on. So we need to find the annual percentage rate. This is given by 1 plus r over n to the power n minus 1. Alright, like that. So let's collect data. The rate is 18%, so you can say 18% over 100%. This will give us 0.18. Then, how many times is this being compounded? Since it's quarterly, we'll say that n is basically 4. And then all we have to do now is to just plug. So the annual percentage rate, which is the effective rate, is equal to 1 plus the rate, which is 0.18, divided by 4 raised to the power 4 minus 1. If you compute this on your calculator, you will get your annual percentage rate to be about 0.19251860006. And if I run this off, the annual percentage rate will be basically 0.19. Now this should be as a percentage. So the annual percentage rate is equal to 0.19 times 100%. We can even run it off to 3. So we can put the 3 there. Yeah, because this number is equal to 5, so we add a 1 there. Makes it 3. So you can do it like that. So the annual percentage rate is equivalent to 19.3%. So that's the annual percentage rate. Now the next question says, Mwape Musonda deposits 100,000 in the bank with an annual interest rate of 10%, and the interest is compounded annually. What would be the total amount at the end of the first, second, and third year? So let's try and solve this. let's see what happens in the first year. In the first year, we're looking for the total amount, which is being compounded. So it's a principal times 1 plus r over n to the power nt. If we collect some data, we know that n is equal to 1 because it's just in 1 year. The rate is 10%, so 10 divided by 100, that would be about 0.1. Then the time period is also within 1 year. The n is 1 because it's just an annual interest. So we're basically going to have s sub 1 being equal to the principal amount, which is 100,000. So we're going to say 100,000 kwacha, then 1 plus 0.1, write it somewhere, can be seen. The principal, 100,000 times 1 plus the rate, which is 0.1 over 1 to the power 1. This will give us in a year an amount of 110,000. This is the amount of money that the person made in the first year. Now let's see what the total amount would be at the second year, at the end of the second year. So at the end of the second year, what we're going to do is just to change the value of n will still be 1, t will now be 2, but everything remains the same. R is still 0.1. So we're going to say that s sub 2 is equal to 100,000 times 1 plus 0.1 over 1 to the power 1 times 2. And the total amount in the second year will be 121,000. In the third year, we'll do the same approach. N will be 1, R will be equal to 0.1. Time period will now just be 3. But the principal amount remains the same. So we say S sub 3 is equal to 100,000 and 1 plus 0.1 over 1 to the power 1 times 3. So the total amount in third year will basically be 131. This will give us 133, then 100. Okay, that's what it's going to give us if we compute on our calculators. So this will be 133,100. That will be the amount that we're going to get. So this is the amount we're going to get. Now moving on to the last question. It says Otis earns about 500,000 per annum for the first year and expects to receive yearly increment of 5%. What would be Otis's salary at fifth year? Now, all we have to do is to collect data. We know that the principal amount is 500,000. The rate is 5%. So 5%, this is like 5% divided by 100%, should give us 0.05. Then the time period is in 5 years. And N is how many times being credited is only per annum. So that's 1. So we say that the total amount, which is going to be salary, will be the principal plus R over N to the power R, or let me say, sorry, NT. So S sub 1 is equal to 500,000 times 1 plus the rate, which is 0.05, over 1 to the power 1 times 5. So this person is going to be getting about 638,140.7813. So you can round off the total amount to be 638,140 kwacha 0.78. So that is the amount of money this person will be getting as salary at 5th year. Alright, if you have any queries, you can reach out to me on WhatsApp on the line 077 149 5252. Remember, slow progress is better than no progress, and that's what the jazz before becoming a statistic. Let's push for that A+.